Up. Today we're gonna be doing Scouting Report episode number 2, focusing on low level macro and micro, also known as mechanics. So the biggest thing that is holding back a lot of low level players is not build orders or not army compositions or whatever kind of strategy talk that you can possibly come up with. It is mechanics that is a huge inhibitor for people getting good at the game. So what do I mean by mechanics? Well, mechanics in a bunch of different games, like League of Legends or CSGO, everything else, it's a general term for how you can move your character, click your mouse, and press your keyboard. That's like the general definition for everything. And to make it a little more, or make a little more sense, having good mechanics means that you can effectively and efficiently control your whatever object you're interacting with on the screen. Pretty much that, yeah. I don't know why I had weird cadence for that sentence, but really effectively and efficiently inputting commands to your game. That's what mechanics is in pretty much every game. League, it's like last hitting, skill shots, positioning. CSGO is like movement and spray control. Super Smash Bros. Is like L canceling, dash dancing, wave dashing. Hearthstone, very simple game. It's clicking a card and moving it onto the board. But we're playing StarCraft here. And StarCraft mechanics is a huge part of being good at the game. In StarCraft, mechanics are macro and micro. Macro being how you manage your economy, and micro being how you manage your army. So, how does this tie in to being a low-level player? Well, low-level players often do not have effective or efficient macro or micro. Not effective or efficient mechanics. So we're going to look at lower level play today to figure out what these kinds of things are that are inhibiting them from getting good at the game, in terms of just macro and micro. And we're going to very specifically problem solve on this level. It's a very general blanket level. And then we're going to look at maybe a higher level game in order to figure out what the differences are between... Oh, forgive me, I had to burp. We're going to look at the differences between lower level and higher level production and army management. So, let's just get into it. Get into our game here. We're going to be looking at this player here, Xrald, our Protoss bro. He's going to be the shining example of what we're going to be talking about today. And this is his enemy here, Willow Tree. So let's get into the game. And very quickly, we're going to be running into a mistake. There's no probes producing here, and this player is going to put down a pylon. So, this player is going to be continuing his production. The problem with this in the early game, or in general, is when you're giving up production of workers in favor of putting down buildings, when you're cutting your worker production in order to get your buildings down, you're putting yourself behind economically. Never ever cut your workers in order to put down a building. So now he's finally got the workers started back up again. and then we'll see right now there is a disparity in the economy. This player has, that is 12 probes mining. Our hero of the day, Xreld. He has 12 probes mining, while Willow Tree over here has 14 probes mining, with the 15th being added there and this one going back on. While they both have the pylon up and a gateway in production. So really, what really happened in that early game decision when you cut your probe? You're behind economically. Look, there's a whole 100 mineral income difference, and you still have the pylon and the gateway going down about the same time. You didn't get an edge by cutting your probe and making your buildings quicker, and you ended up just behind economically. So that is one of the big first things that you'll notice in lower level play. A lot of the times they'll cut production and just put down buildings, because then it feels like you're getting your stuff up faster. It feels like you're gonna be able to start making things sooner, but oftentimes it ends up that you're pretty much in the same position. Both of their gases go down at the same time. Their gateways are both gonna finish around the same time. Really, this player is just gonna be in a superior position to our hero here. In terms of the economy, we have 18 harvesters versus 15, purely because of this decision early game to make the buildings, here we see it again, the cybernetics core and the gateway being put down instead of probes being made. So this player will continue to pull further and further ahead with the money that they're making, while this player is going to be in Sadville. I'm not going to focus anything at all on the builds. This player is opting for an earlier Nexus, while this player is going for more gateways and cybernetics cores. What I am gonna say is, when you do make buildings, always be planning to produce out of them. So what exactly does that mean? Just making stuff out of your buildings? Isn't that the obvious, like, duh? Why would you put down a building if you're not going to make anything out of it? Well, oftentimes you're actually going to see within this game that regardless of whether or not you have a building down, you're not always going to be making out of it, especially in the lower level play. Now at the higher level, you're gonna be on your production all the time. If you have any building whatsoever, the moment that you can make another unit, you're gonna be making another unit. That's how the higher level players will play. In the lower level, they're gonna have a bunch of buildings sitting around that, one, they either can't afford to make anything out of, or two, they just don't produce out of like consistently. Like, it's not gonna be a production of, once a zealot finishes, another zealot is gonna be coming out. It's gonna be more like, once a zealot finishes, there's gonna be a 30-second gap of no production whatsoever, as in the gateway just being a wasted investment, and then another zealot is gonna be made. We want that production to constantly be rolling. So, back into the game. See a small little thing happening over here. Blah blah blah. And again, this player, 3 probes up. Gap is kind of close. He slacked on his production too, but now he's picking back up. Now it's a 4 probe gap. Here we have the mothership core coming out. It's all fine and dandy, but if we look here, why do we have the gateways at all? It took them so long to make these adepts. if we even let's go back 40 seconds in the game, and let's just stare here. The moment that this zealot finishes, let's stare for how long the gateways don't make anything. Okay, well, something was immediately made. I'll look like a dumbass. But, oh, there's a gap. There's, oh, now we're making something. Are we gonna make something immediately after that? Nope, nope. We're just chilling here. There's nothing happening. Now it gets turned into a gateway. We make something. Let's check the gateway cooldowns. We're sitting here. We can produce. We can produce. Oh, we finally make something. We can produce. We can produce out of these gateways. We can produce. And nothing is being made. So that's a problem that happens in lower leagues. You'll have a bunch of production that you're sitting on and not being able, or not just doing something with it. So we'll go back to the beginning of the game and slow down instead of speeding past all that kind of stuff. Again, with the putting down 2 buildings instead of continuing the pro production. We're gonna see that this kind of stuff in the early game doesn't really matter that much. He's putting down his other 2 gateways, and now we're seeing something that I'll characterize this little attack we have going on as good. Why is it good? Well, when you choose to put down this kind of production early game, as in like the 2 gateways and the cybernetics core, when you choose to put that down and the other player wants to put down a nexus, then you have to have in mind a purpose for you making the attack units rather than the expansion yourself. Why are you putting down the gateways and the cybernetics core? Well, yeah, what is the purpose of that? If you're gonna put down those gateways that early on and you make a bunch of units out of it, what are you gonna do with them? Are they just there for being safe? You don't need 8 trillion adepts early on to just be safe. So why not just go and attack with them? You didn't see any kind of early thing coming from the other Protoss. Like if they were to try to attack you, it would have happened a while ago, right? So because you didn't see an attack come in, go ahead and attack them with your early production. So I would characterize the decision to go across the map with the units that you already have as a pretty good one in this early stage, because if you aren't getting hit and you have a bunch of units just sitting around, why not go and hit them? Let's back into the game. We're gonna slow down and watch this one from our hero's point of view. And we're gonna see some big problems here. Did you notice anything there? The entire time that the attention is being spent looking over here, literally nothing happens. Let's look at this. One last time. Had our player just looked over at his base to make more out of his gateways, or transform them into warp gates, or continue to make some probes, put down maybe an assimilator, spend his money in general, the same result would have happened over here, if that makes any sense. Rephrasing it, even if our player over here, again, let's bring it back to here. Let's say I took all these units and I just press attack, put it down here, or as he has it over here, and then I just looked over here the entire time. If I looked here the entire time that that army was fighting, the result would not have changed. Instead, what happens is our player sits here just watching his things die. Nothing really goes on here. The result didn't change. And instead, the money hiked up way high. We have 750 minerals. No production. Finally, the warp gates are being changed. Make something out of the warp gates. Good. But he could be putting down more pylons. He could be putting down some gateways. Just sitting there staring at your army without any change whatsoever is not a good use of your attention, and also puts you behind economically because you don't spend your money unless you're looking at your base. So we're gonna see the second nexus go down, but there's no probe production from these nexuses. There is no probes being made. So even though he has the second base over here, there's nothing being made out of the... Oh, finally, one coming out of here. Just one from the main nexus. Nothing coming out of the second nexus. And he's putting down his Twilight Council, puts down the pylon. That's all fine and good if he continued making the probes. Now, that is a whole 8 probe difference from our Protoss player over here. 300 minerals per minute difference in the income. At least I'm pretty sure that's in terms of per minute. And the problem is, yeah, the money is now being kept down low. Production is being put down, putting down the robotics facility, Twilight Council, but that doesn't really matter when you're not really earning that much money. It's very, very easy to spend money and keep yourself at zero if you're not earning that much money. This is the same thing with real life. If you're working at McDonald's, for $8 an hour, and you work 8 hours. Untaxed, that is $64. And if every day you spent $50 on food, you're gonna end up, yeah, your money is constantly low. Oh man, that sucks. Yeah, but you can't spend that way when you're not earning that much money. It's the same concept with StarCraft 2. In this case, you're earning the $8 an hour with these small, minuscule amount of probes, but you're spending $50 a day on these gateways. You're not going to be able to make use of these gateways. These gateways aren't being used whatsoever. Sure, you're keeping your money low, and you're effectively spending you're not effectively, but you are keeping it down and you're not floating a huge amount, but you can't do anything with this production. If we keep going on, we'll see our player over here. They both have roughly the same amount of stuff right now, but this player is going to, by far, going to be able to pull ahead in terms of the amount of stuff, just a sheer amount of stuff he's gonna be able to make. I'm swapping it over to our Protoss player's camera here, because the next thing that I want to focus on is this here. When your warp gates are allowed to produce, this number will go up. So right now we have 4 warp gates. Once they are all allowed to produce something, there will be a 4 in the upper right corner. You never want that number to hike up to the maximum amount of gateways that you have. Biggest reason is when you're not producing out of your buildings, when you're not constantly making something, you're not getting any effectiveness out of them. There's no reason to have a gateway unless you're making something out of it. And we're gonna see for a while it's gonna sit at this 4. Oh, makes 1 zealot 4. And again, we'll see the money. The money is kinda low. It's doing okay. Oh, now it's hiking up, hiking up, hiking up. 1 zealot gets made, and the rest of the gateways aren't producing anything. The nexus isn't producing anything. And another nexus is being put down. Why? We have to close down on this kinds of stuff, this kind of decision making. Yeah, your money sometimes it's just gonna bounce up, but you have to figure out the reason. Is it because I'm not spending it on my units? Am I not constantly producing something out of my gateways? Am I not constantly making the probes? What is the solution? Solution isn't to continue putting down more production when you can't spend that money. If you have 800 gateways on one base, yeah, you're spending all your minerals on your gateways or whatever, but that's not going to be going to use. You can't use all of those gateways. It's the same concept over here, which the same concept of why I wondered why this nexus was being put down here. Why would you put down another nexus when you can't even spend the money that you're making on units? You're not constantly making units. If this player was continually making units, this army would be so much larger. We can even see the other player has like close to 20 supply more than him, and then it's just gonna sit on 2. Oh, finally went down to 0. The 5th gateway is over here, but we're not producing. Oh, made some stalkers, went down to 2. We just want to keep this at 0. And then we have yet another nexus that you're putting down when you can't afford anything from it. Hell, even this 3rd nexus over here doesn't have enough probes because production wasn't being kept up on. And now if we look over to the other player, we have 16 out of 16 workers here, 16 out of 16 workers here, 7 out of 8. This is good production. He's managed to keep up all of his bases with the probes that are needed to saturate it properly, as well as create a pretty decent army. Whether or not he was effectively spending his money on the gateways the entire time, that's 100% a no. I'm just gonna tell you straight up that you can't afford this many gateways, as well as 2 robotics facilities, as well as 2 starports, if you're continually producing out of every single production facility that you have. If you did, then you probably have like just a lot less gateways, maybe only 1 robotics facility and 1 Stargate. The problem for our player over here, even though he has fewer production facilities total, 6, he can kind of keep up with this guy as long as he's continually spending it on the units. Never ever have your warp gate counter down here be higher than 0. You don't want that. You want to constantly be making warp gates or units off of your warp gate, and you constantly want to be making the probes. This is how you get that smooth production. This is how you make a lot of money and effectively spend it to just have more stuff than your opponent. Now here, this engagement isn't very good. That blink was very strong, help get the player back into the position. But what is it? Which one? Control A. Army supply. Already going into this, the other player just has more stuff. You can see even in the supply up here, this player has just simply more stuff. Regardless of what the composition is, regardless of this engagement, even though this engagement was bad, this other player just has more stuff. And by virtue of having more stuff, he's just gonna win this battle. Although there is one kinda big mistake that I want to point out in this fight from our red player over here, Exrald. We're gonna watch it in just a second. Let's put this on normal. This move right here. Oh, the army went from here to here, and the entire time it was walking that way, the army just sat there and took damage. It would have been better to just leave the army here and have it attack. That's just one example of a small micro misplay. But if the armies were even, if this player had just as much stuff as the other player and did that same thing, that would have lost him the fight. Unfortunately, in this situation, he was going to lose the fight regardless, just because he didn't have as much stuff, because he didn't produce as much stuff. Now we're seeing the panic make units because I need to be able to hold off this attack, and he's just going to end up losing his stuff and losing the game. And this is all due to just not being on top of your production, not constantly making immortals, not constantly using your gateways here, and putting down units and making full use of everything that you have. Continue to make those probes, continue to make those gateways, making units, and then you'll find yourself out of the dumps of the lower leagues in a very, very short amount of time. Now, I do have a couple of other replays, but I'm just gonna blast through these ones. It's gonna be pretty much the same concept, where one player is going to win purely based on their production, while the other player is going to lose because of their production. Now, in this game, we have our Protoss player up here, and our Terran player down here. Now, I'm just gonna play this replay really, really fast. Again, I think it's kind of become part of this player's early plan to just cut the production and put down those gateways. You don't want to do that. Don't cut production to put down gateways that you're not producing out of. And then we'll just kind of keep the income tab looming over there. In this game, it seems that our player here is a lot more on top of making those probes, but these gateways are still not going to be used to their full potential. Both players are going to have their expansions at roughly the same time. Oh, my bad. And then we're going to see this little move out. And this is a fairly even... Just kidding, it wasn't even whatsoever. It looked like it was going to be even Regardless of whether or not it was gonna be or was even, we already immediately see a couple of big problems from both players. So our Protoss player here is just not making full use of the production whatsoever. And our Terran player here has a huge, much greater amount of money being made just because he keeps making his SCVs. So here, the Terran player just has a little more stuff to deal with this army pushing up here. And then there's there's that move command that will lose you fights. You never ever want to just have your units move during a fight. We'll slow it down. It'll be this next click right here. That entire time his units are getting shot at without doing any damage themselves. This player just has more stuff to deal with his army. And also, the siege tanks here, they have splash damage, meaning they have the ability to target and hit more than one unit at a time, which will make them a lot more effective at killing things than just being able to shoot one unit at a time the way those stalkers and immortals will. And during this time, Terran now has much more money that he's not spending, because he also has the problem of not being on top of his production nearly as much, and he also doesn't have as much producing facilities, while our player here, getting down the third nexus, finally kind of getting the probe count up, but still not spending the money that he's making off of these gateways, not making units out of their robotics facilities enough. Again, the economy is just sort of behind now. It's got this forge that isn't upgrading anything, this Twilight Council that's not upgrading anything, this robotics facility is not making anything right now. Finally we see an upgrade go down. The robotics bay is good, but nothing is being made out of the robotics facilities. And the money is going up and up and up and up and up. This Terran player, his money is also going up and up and up and up and up. But he's already done the bare minimum of making more stuff than our Protoss player. Just being able to spend more money and continuously produce. The biggest hint here is producing units out of his facilities. So even though our Protoss player here has a lower lower money count, he's not banking a huge amount of money, he's not making that much stuff. And we're just gonna see the Protoss player here kind of lose from here on out. Terran's gonna pull back, but really at this point he could just do anything pretty much and he's won. Our Protoss player is sitting on there with a huge amount of money because he's not making the units. Has to continue using production out of those gateways. Not doing that. You'll see the Terran player just build up this massive ball of stuff. This is a maximum supply here, 200 out of 200. At this point you're usually going to want to just throw units at a wall. Just because you can make more stuff than the other person, so it doesn't really matter if you lose your stuff. Now our Protoss player, sure, he has low amounts of money, he's being able to spend his money, but just doesn't have that much stuff. And the player, Terran over here, is just gonna walk in and kill all of our Protoss players' stuff pretty easily. And we're gonna go into one last replay where our player here is actually gonna win. Forgive me for the spoilers, but we're gonna go into a game where our player here wins. And we're gonna focus on the production aspect of it. So pretty early on, this is kind of a cheeky move to put down a pylon here, but our player here is gonna do it. In the meantime, this player is putting down this assimilator and these 2 pylons for no real reason. I honestly don't know why. But we're seeing more pro production. They're actually kind of just sitting there the entire time. Just had another burp. But the probes are just sitting there the entire time. You should lose the game because of that. But because the other player wasn't making as many probes, as we see here in the harvesters, he's not earning as much money, he's just gonna fall behind. So we're gonna see more production out of our player here. Has that pylon in the corner, and he's always gonna be a little bit ahead or even with our enemy Protoss there. Puts down a Dark Shrine. This doesn't really matter too much. Has units out here. And then this guy, he's gonna move out with an army that is actually slightly larger, but this is a very doable kind of supply difference in the army. He still has 6 supply up on our player here, but that's like 3 stalkers. That's not that much. On the other hand, our player over here is doing something cheeky over here. Doesn't really matter. What matters is that because our player here in the blue has more harvesters and has more general production, he's gonna be able to take this fight very, very easily. He has like 1 Dark Templar. It's not gonna matter too much. And then he has, well, 2 Dark Templar. They're not gonna be that crucial. They're gonna definitely do a lot of damage, but because he has enough stuff to generally be even in a fight here and still has more production, he's also going to be able to make more stuff over here to kill this stuff. Now I'm saying stuff and production a lot. What I really mean is he has units here. These units are enough to take a straight on fight here. And because he still has enough money, he's still making enough money in general, he can feel free to continue making things over in the other player's base. This is purely because of his production. This is not a win due to having Dark Templars and catching his opponent off guard. This is a win because our player over here is able to make just as much, if not more stuff than the other player, that he gets to kind of throw around his supply like this. And now these DTs actually get a pretty decent amount of damage done, a really good amount of kills. These DTs are gonna kill everything in the base here. But now he has, look, we have 6 stalker here, this guy has 5 stalkers, and on top of that we have way more DTs. We have just more general army stuff than the other guy. So the other guy is gonna end up losing this game due to production and money. Alright. So it's kind of weird. If you're a lower level player, you kind of look back on those games and be like, well, in the first game, I just kind of got overwhelmed. The other guy had more stuff than me. He maybe took expansions faster than me, and he just had more stuff to kill my stuff. And that's like what the first two games would feel like. In the third game that he won there, you would think, oh, well, I just sort of won because I made DTs and he wasn't ready for it. I just made those Dark Templars and he wasn't able to deal with them properly. But if you look purely in terms of macro and production, then you will see that that was not a build choice win. That wasn't a win because of Dark Templars. That was a win because of production. He was able to make enough stuff to be able to overwhelm the enemy regardless of what kind of trade happened. He was able to trade evenly while making more stuff over in his side of the base. So that's kind of a general thing that lower level players would want to look at. I'm just gonna hop into a higher level game, one of my games with a Protoss. I'm just trying to find something random that isn't a cheesy game, something that goes out a pretty decent amount. Let's look at this game. And we're gonna focus here on this Protoss player's production and see what it really should kind of look like. This is me playing Protoss. We're not gonna watch this game. Oh god, we're not gonna watch me play Protoss. That's torture that I wouldn't want to subject anyone to. That was my streak of playing random on unranked for a bit. Let me find one where I'm playing Zerg and the other player is playing Protoss. That lasts a decent amount of time. Preferably where I lose. It was the old replay, but still applies. Still the same general concepts will apply. So let's go into it. We have me over on this side and the Protoss player over there. Why? Ambient sounds. Okay. And we're gonna bring the sound down. Okay, much better. And resume. Let's focus on this player's production. He's still making things. Let me Let me just have this up so it's easier to see. This guy's continuously making probes. Sits on 2 gateways for a very long time because he's able to spend the money from the gateways. He's got those 2 adepts coming across the map. And still just making those probes. Making probes. Continuously making out of those gateways. Got so 4 sentries out. Turns them into work gates. Still gonna make even more stuff. It's got those 2 stargates out. And notice the entire time money is being kept pretty low. Still putting down even more bases. Has them all with a good amount of probes. Still making the units out of his gateways. producing out of this, producing out of these, keeping his money low by making units and utilizing his production. Is me doing dumb things, stupid Zerg stuff. And after this game, we're just gonna go ahead and take some questions, if there are any, or we could form our own kind of questions. And there was a small thing that I wanted to make note of, and I'm just gonna end up losing this game because I didn't have that much stuff to kill his stuff with, because I have more things to kill my things. At this point, I should just leave the game, but yeah, there we go. Bum, bum, bum. So that pretty much max supply. His build was specific, where these are gonna stop producing after a set amount of time, and then he's just gonna utilize the gateways or whatever. But he was much more on top of the production than a lower level player would have been. So, questions and concepts. Oops. There we go. Questions and concepts. Biggest thing, when you make a building, some kind of production building, always keep using it. Anytime a gateway is not on cooldown or not making a unit, it is useless. You're not getting any value out of it. You want to constantly keep those warp gate counts at 0, constantly make those probes. That way you can just keep up with the amount of stuff that you need to be able to kill other people. And also, do not stop making probes so then you could have a little bit more money to put down some buildings. And also, one other small thing that kind of goes hand in hand with the constant production. When you're in a lower league, you're going to notice that your money kind of does this on a graph in terms of the amount of money that you have. Like, your money is going to build, drop, build, drop. You don't want that. What kind of happens in that kind of way is your money is not being spent for a large amount of time, and then what a lot of players will tend to do, they'll make units, and then the additional drop is going to be putting down more production facilities because they want to be able to spend their money. Instead, you want your graph to kind of look like this along the entire way. It's kind of like a flatter kind of line where money is building up, you drop, build, drop, build, drop, build, drop, and you're just continuously making stuff throughout, so then your money doesn't hike up to astronomical points. Exponential points. There we go. Astronomical isn't even a word. You don't want your money to jump way up here and then suddenly drop because you couldn't keep making things throughout that entire timeline. So, any question? One question might be, why do you look so ugly? Probably because I'm a dirty hobo and I just sit here and do nothing so I can look ugly all fucking day. That's about it. I'm chilling. I don't know if I'm gonna be doing more of these. Probably whenever I find something interesting that I want to talk about. Today it was just the lower level players. One thing that really irks me is when lower level players are told, oh, they need to build this kind of unit or this kind of build order they have to follow, or like all this kind of stuff, where in reality it's just they're not making probes consistently, they're not spending money consistently on their units, they're not making full utilization of what they have. These are the kinds of things that really bother me when people aren't paying attention to. So, that kind of wraps up today. I'm gonna go ahead and do some other shit. Yeah, and then hope everyone has a nice night. Bye bye. And 3